not that you need any introduction, but just kind of share some of his thoughts about you. And as you know, Victoria, this is very informal. If you have a question, just jump in. You have any thoughts, you know, we always have a lot of other questions, but really we want this to be a dialogue.
Sure.
Well, again, welcome. And I'm pretty sure we've all read James's bio, and he's already given us some great highlights. And as a playwright and winning the Hodder Fellowship, that little ride he said that someone gave him and nominated him for a fellowship at Princeton. That's what that was. And you spent years there at Princeton, a few years there. But really, you know, Jim's legacy, as he's mentioned, is really directing the Michener Center. And it is a one-of-a-kind center where fellowships are given to young writers, where they don't have to teach anything, they just write. And it's interesting that we're reading, that we have read this latest book, because there are great parallels. What we read in the book and what Jim did and established at the University of Texas, which is really one of the premier writing programs in the country. The graduates of that program have gone on to win almost all the prestigious awards. I think even there's a Booker Prize.
There's a couple. There've been a couple nominees.
Yeah.
National Book Award,
National Book Awards, yes, all that. And so, Jim, as Karen said, this is going to be very informal.
Sure.
A few things for you to respond to, but then we can all just ask questions and think about the story. I read the book and I actually listened to it, the audio. So to be very transparent, and the gentleman who read the book on the audio was phenomenal.
He's great. Yeah.
From the beginning, I could see Frankie, right? And the way he read it, and so share a little bit about how you decided to get into the story through that character. Because
sure, I'd be happy to.
But talked about Frankie.
Oh it was interesting. It was first of all, I said, I wonder if I should even write this book. But there was a couple little things. One is that every year I would go pick up some writer at the airport. Often in many cases, never met them. Maybe I'd seen a picture on the book jacket. And I kept thinking, what if I got the wrong person? That was one thing. The other thing is, there was actually a number of them. The other thing was, I got to know Michener quite well. And the story is deep, really. And I think he was a genuinely great man and generous. But he had grown up an orphan. And there was a lot about being an orphan in that book. And also, and this is sort of the tragedy of his life, he had been married 1, 2, 3 times, I think. On the second marriage, they adopted 2 children. And at some point, he didn't think he couldn't handle it, and the marriage was breaking up. And they gave the children away. And I know from things that would come out that it haunted him all his life. And he had even hired a detective to see if he could find these children. So that was such a haunting thing. And for a writer, it's hard to leave it alone, you know? So those are some of the deeper currents in the book. I would say that that the other thing, this is just to be silly. Has anybody seen Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg? It's a little like Sister Act, you know, like the cabaret singer who's mistaken for a nun. I sort of loved that. So I kept playing with the whole thing of mistaken identity, and I hope that it operates at a number of levels, really. And then, of course, is this poor man. I often felt like it. This imposter is trying to teach creative writing. And if you teach creative writing, you often feel like an imposter and you have no idea what they're talking about. So, and he really has it bad. So a lot of the fun in the book really is about teaching and about the students. And I hope the book has a heart to it, but also, people find themselves quite delighted by that book. So, you do drafts and it keeps taking on another level. It's like making, what do you make? Lasagna or something. I don't know.
A follow-up to that, you shared a little bit about Michener.
Yeah.
Tell me this, because having known a little bit about him and
Yeah.
the center, obviously, did you think about this book or this story earlier on and just waited to write it, or did it just kind of?
No, I waited. There were little pieces of it that I thought this would be good and this would be good, and then really he had been gone, dead. He'd been died 10 years before I could go, but I kept marinating, and I wanted it in its own wacky way to be a tribute to him. In the end, what he had hoped for, he succeeds at. He does create this world of very successful young writers, which did happen, but never. He was always impatient. I remember after the first year, he would say, I always wanted to support a young writer, a talented, but I've never found one. It sent a chill down my spine. Well, we did find them. It just took a little, it didn't happen as fast as he wanted, And the university was amazing. I mean, they absolutely rolled out the red carpet for him. This is when he was writing the book Texas, and they would take private planes and fly him to some bull sale out in West Texas, or, and he met everyone. And he was old and he was suffering. I met him when he was 80. He died at 90. He was in a wheelchair. He had heart problems. I remember once, Greg, in front of the library, I walked over. I saw a big ambulance out in front, and they had just taken Michener and taken him to the hospital, one of many times. And he had, kidney failure. He was on dialysis at the end. I mean, all the tough stuff that can happen. So he had a huge effect on my life, obviously, so it was a thing.
Have a question for Jim before I launch back into something else?
I was just going to ask about the cover, the picture.
Yeah, what about that? My goodness.
Is it a person behind that hat, or what's going on there?
They never answered that question for me. I said, what is going on? But it is a little bit like a picture of there's a picture of Michener with a hat like that, but they assembled it in various ways. So I've come to like that hat. I was never quite, I come to like that cover. I was never totally sure.
Mm-hmm. Jim, of course, Frankie is the protagonist in this book, but is there another character that you just find is your favorite, or that you just kind of fell in love with as you were writing it?
Oh, in the book?
Yeah.
Well, this is so funny. Frankie's a big deal. Well, the Michener character, the old writer, the feelings went deep, in what he is going through. And then even the students, there was little tips of the hat to some of the students I've had. But they're rascals, these young students, in their 20s. They're not totally grown up yet. So you have to start dealing with that. I mean, and a lot of them are still in my life, even after 5 years. Some are just writing for recommendations, but others are they're writing because they can't get published. They published one book and can't publish the next. But I love these connections still. It was very rich indeed.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I've been teeing up questions for Jim. Let Jim listen to us a little bit. What did we think of the book? I mean, Victoria, Karen, Denise, what are your thoughts before I share anything?
I mean, I really enjoyed a couple things. I mean, I've been in higher ed now about 8 or 9
Right.
years. And so some of the things that you were sharing, you can relate to in a different level, whether it's about academia or if it's about the students that you see. So, you know, I could relate to that. Also, I've been in Austin since the mid 80s. So anytime you talk about that, and I know Denise has something about that, you know, it was always kind of like, I know where that is, or I know what he's talking about.
I know.
And
Exactly.
did you get a kick out of being able to pull in all the different things from Austin and write about that?
I did. At some point, you know, I came to Austin in 85 and I lived a couple of places, grew up in the Midwest, lived in Manhattan for 20 years. And at some point, and also I was teaching and I thought, I want to write books where I don't have to travel halfway across the country to research them. So I started looking around at things that I could use, you know. I'm trying to remember. Now, then the other problem is I get my books confused, but I've done all sorts of, you know, odd bits of research, going out to the Adobe Paisano and trying to dig a hole in the ground. Oh my God, all this stuff. And the trips out to West Texas. You know, there's just so many things, you know.
And have you got any like feedback on the book for maybe those that aren't in academia that said like, this could never happen, or
it's so interesting.
You're making this up, you know, you don't know.
People really have liked this book. They find it hilarious. Most have had enough connection with higher ed to know that this is the way a lot of it goes. I had 1 or 2 people, and this was painful, who thought I had exploited Michener. You know, I wasn't kind enough to him. But it is a farce in a way, and he is fooled. Of course, the one who's really fooled is the poor director of the program himself.
Yeah.
You know, but I had to make more fun of him than anybody else. But I'm trying to think of other reactions. But there's one guy who in Portland, a college professor, who's taught this to his class every year for the last 5 or 6 years.
Really?
Yeah, and they're intrigued, you know, as if this is what we're in for if we continue with college, you know. But anyway. So it's been good. And it seems to have a life even after, you know, a few years. That's been great.
Any other comments you want to share, Denise?
Oh, no, I just wanted to echo what Karen was saying about the old Austin. It really made me nostalgia for all of that. My dad and my uncles lived in the Hyde Park area. So I grew up in that area during the summers, and I could read your book and think about, you know, running around in Hyde Park and all of that area on my bike with my dad and my uncles, and saying, I know exactly what he's talking about. It was just so wonderful to reflect back on that in that way, right? It was a pleasant surprise in the book. I knew it was going to be in Austin once, you know, he started talking about it. But then, you know, just the different things that you just really honed in on really tugged at my heartstrings, and it had some really good memories. So I did love that very much. There was
when we first came to Austin, we lived in Travis Heights, but just, you know, across from what was a feed store then. That's Guero's now. And there's a novel called Windfall that begins when the man's out looking for his lost cat and discovers all these coolers filled with $100 bills under Guero's. Oh my God, it created such a sensation. I don't know. But, you know, so I continue to use Austin in all kinds of ways, you know, all kinds of ways. I'll get a couple more books in yet, I promise. So we'll see.
I don't know why, but I don't know if it's the way I grew up with movies, but I always find myself wanting the con to get away with some of their.
It's terrible. It's a terrible thing you do. You really do. You start rooting for them.
I did. And when he found that locker, I just thought, you got to be kidding me. How did he figure that out? And then, oh yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I'm
I
so
wanna-
sorry. I'm so sorry. It didn't get away utterly. Yeah.
I know. It's just terrible. And
I have a lot of books on cons. I ended up buying a lot of them over the time.
So that was one of the things that here I go again, always rooting for the con. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's probably not, but that's what
I'm very worried about you, really.
Yeah.
That's great. No,
I wonder what prison is he in at the end? Did you have a venue of a prison that he ended up in?
Well, I'm trying to remember. Isn't he? I was just thinking when I lived in Manhattan, everybody would always, get on the train and go north to visit somebody. Is it Sing Sing that's north of New York?
No, I don't think it's Sing Sing because that's a maximum prison.
And this is lightweight. Yeah. So that was pretty invented. It's sort of a joke about minimum security prisons and how cushy they are.
Yeah. Because you did make it cushy sounding. Yeah.
So his life isn't that bad. That's great.
Well, I'll tell you one of the amazing pieces that I enjoyed was the scene where they're talking about the best first lines of a book.
Oh, right.
And all of them come out, all the students who are, some are being pompous and just trying to show off. And then of course they mentioned the mole book that he's supposed to have written. And he's like, yeah.
Right. That's right.
Like it's not, he has no idea, but I love those little moments where he is really trying.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
And I think the way you wrote him is just like he just kind of he allows the momentum of the other folks to just take the moment over, and he just slides out. It seems.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh,
but
yeah.
That's what a con does, really, kind of. I mean, they just believe in whatever, and they just he says that several times where he says, I just sit back and let them go at it, and I don't even engage. And it just, they kind of.
Teachers do that more often than you'd ever know.
That's really funny, yeah.
That's
now,
great.
Did any of your students ever write you? He talks about at the end there where the students write letters to him and they're upset and everything.
Well, you know what? This is interesting. I've gotten students have written me letters about the book, but none of them were ever upset. That, as far as I can, I don't think so.
Good. Well, that's good.
Yeah. Somebody wrote me a couple of weeks ago, I'm writing a book about a con artist. And I thought, oh, you poor guy. Hope it works. Yeah.
Oh,
Share with us.
I just don't like to repeat myself. You want another challenge, a different kind of thing. Try another tone. You wouldn't want to sing the same song your whole life. So same with a novel,
To that point, Jim, talk to us about your process of writing. So you've written, 8 novels. When we spoke, you said you just submitted another one, 8 novels plus. I'm losing count. But talk about your process of doing that, and how do you, come up with new ideas and then walk through, how do you get to a story that is entertaining to you and makes sense to you?
Well, it's interesting. In the beginning, it was hard in my 20s. I would even where do stories come from? I would go to the newspaper and read the log lines for TV movies and see if I could rip them off. I didn't know. So it's a lot of trial and error in the beginning. And the first novel, I was so helped by an editor who sort of found the shape of it. And that was great. But as you get older and my notebooks fill up with ideas more than I can ever use. So it's a question of which one comes to the fore at the right moment that's most exciting to me. And and you never know. I feel the way I feel is a chance. Like maybe I can still do something great. Let's see. Nobody can tell me no till I get done, and get it out there. But I write almost every day, usually not Sunday, but 6 days a week. Even when I was teaching, I would be over in Gregory's place. I would write in the mornings at the PCL, and then go in and be a big shot administrator in the afternoon. And I would do draft after draft, longhand. I just had to change because I can't read my handwriting anymore. I'm at the age you think, oh my, what is this? So I'm learning and I'm adjusting to this new way of doing things. I keep copious notes. I usually keep a notebook just filled with ideas to accompany, the text of the novel. I don't let anybody see it till I'm taking it as far as I can take it, because so many ideas come. You're sitting there working away, just copying, and then after an hour and a half, that's an idea. Oh, that's something. If you just, it's the seat of the pants in the chair. That's the key, and it will happen. It becomes a kind of deep concentration where you can eventually, you stick with it, you can you're sort of in the scene, you can see everything, you know where everything is. If there's a jury trial, what the jury's looking like and who's watching and what the assistant district attorney is handing, and you just then have to pick and make a little poem out of it, so it's a nice life still. It's a very nice life.
That's wonderful. Go ahead, Karen.
I was when you were managing the Michener Center, did you get a sense that you had a lot of colleagues or others that were jealous of your position or felt that they wanted it?
Oh gosh, it's so funny. That's a great and complicated question. I think they did get jealous. I mean, I'm sure they did. But in the beginning, they didn't. And they kept saying, oh, you're just trying to, train TV writers or something. He wanted to dismiss it. But then it became too big a deal to really dismiss that easily. And then eventually they got sort of humble and would come over and they would want to teach at the Michener Center or put it on their bio, on their CV, that they were an adjunct professor or whatever. Because it took a while for it to really take off. And we were off by ourselves. We were not, we were across the Adobe House across the 26th Street. So if people were mad at me in the English department, they'd have to walk half a mile to get to me. So that was good. But there were certainly supporters in the English department too. They were great. Jim Garrison was great. There were a lot of them that were very, very helpful. But gosh, when money is involved, I don't know if you found that it makes people crazy.
Mm-hmm. I will say this, especially at the University of Texas at Austin.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
This is funny. Gregory, I just saw Joanna Hitchcock at a party.
Yes.
And we were talking, we would have a meeting once a week with the provost, all the people whose, budgets didn't exactly report to anybody but him.
Right.
And then she said, and at the end, we would all go around the room and everybody was like begging for money. He said, and you were the only one that never said anything. I said, well, I didn't want anything from any of those people. I just wanted to be left alone. I don't know that I should be telling all these stories, but anyway.
You should be telling.
I should, yeah.
It's very enjoyable and entertaining. And, you mentioned Joanna, and she was, for those of you who don't know, she headed the UT Press for years.
Yeah.
Director of UT Press. So Jim, what do you read? What do you like to read?
Yeah, I was going to ask that too. Thanks for asking that.
Well, it changes. Sometimes it's a little bit of research. I'm trying to think of,
Mhm.
I've been reading things about the origins of the far right, where that came from recently for a book. But I'm also reading, a friend of mine said the greatest trial scene in all of literature is Dostoevsky's and the Brothers Karamazov. So I went back to read that. I'm reading Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man right now. I'm going back to read all the books that I think were really great because I worry I've forgotten them. So why not experience the best again, as you get older? I wonder if I'm missing some of the young writers. I mean, I had so much to do with young writers, that I'm fed up with them. No, I'm not fed up with it, but no, it's great. But I sort of want to get in touch with older things, the best. I spent like 2 years reading Don Quixote, I think, and finally got at what was so brilliant about it. So I'm always
Share-
reading something.
Share more about you. You mentioned young writers. Share with us what do young writers need, I guess is where I'm going with. I mean, you ran a program that was there to give them the resources where they could just write. But in your classes or in conversations and in mentoring them, what do young writers need?
Well, I think they need time, they need encouragement. Sometimes in a class, you operate like an editor, this could be fixed or that. Most of the time they don't take your advice. And that's okay. They need to find their own way out of this stuff. It's interesting whether I've really helped people. I think, yeah. I mean, there's some books I was very involved with and some young writers who are willing to go back again and again. A lot of them have not learned that lesson yet. So and there were others like that. There was a writer named Philip Meyer who wrote The Sun. That was a big deal in a big TV series or something. He just put his head down. He couldn't. He and his roommate, they would have a contest who could write the longest, and they would only take breaks to go shoot air guns at grackles out the window, and they would go back. And they were maniacs. They really were total maniacs, and you kind of knew they were going to be successful with that young energy, which I envy. But and also they can get so discouraged too, and they want to pack it in. But you try to get it. It was getting them back on their feet after that. I remember one young writer who was great. She was a poet, and she said she just hit a writer's block. And so I said, okay, I'm not a poet, but I'll make you a deal. Each of us is going to write one poem a week. I'm going to write one, and then you write one, and we're going to bring them in every Wednesday. And we did that for like a month, and she was fine. Away she went. She's kind of a big deal. She's got a good job at St. John's or someplace now. But, they do crater. And you give them a lot of rope, sometimes too much rope, but you got to give them that rope, I think. And they are motivated. They know and for some, it would help a pressure to get into a very competitive program. And they would try to compare themselves with somebody else, which is, inevitable, but, you got to look out for that. Try to stay away from that. It's been good.
Jim, I had a question. Had you ever, when you look back at your young self, could you ever imagine that you would have ended up in Austin, Texas and doing what you were doing? Or what did you think?
That's so interesting. That's interesting. My young self, I was pretty naive, let's say in college. Someone had pointed out that I could write well. So I had this beatnik teacher with hair down to her waist, and she used my little essay as a example of fine student writing. Well, that was it. I was going to be a writer. And I bought little books about how to do it, but I didn't know. And then I went to New York. There was an early marriage that failed, but it took me to New York, and I would write. Oh, and then I wrote a little play. This is interesting. I was working for the welfare department, and there was someone there who had a little theater troupe in Harlem, and I gave him a tiny play of mine about this all-American Adam getting a black Eve. It's a little comedy, 35 minutes. Well, they did it, and then it got done everywhere. And every Mennonite school in America did that play. It was sort of naive, but it was good. It worked. And I think I was going to be famous? I didn't know what. I was sort of so inchoate. And I just got bounced around. I thought the key would be a novelist somehow. So I kept writing novels. And I couldn't see myself going back to Wisconsin, as much affection as I had. Had I become a New York writer, I certainly knew a lot of writers then on the Upper West Side. No one had any money, and they were all interesting. I couldn't see how I could ever leave New York. But then, I got married. We had kids, 2 little kids. We were broke, and there was a job down here. And someone said, "Oh, Austin is like Athens. It'll be great." And then I came down to interview, and they had a party for me, and no one came. We sat in the backyard and watched the flights over Bergson. It was amazing. And I went back and I called my wife. She says, "How is it? Is it great?" I said, "You have no idea." But they offered me the job. We came. It was hard at first because it was a big school, a big department. No one paid much attention to us really at the start. But we gradually, through kids and stuff, you start, take kids to Deep Eddy, and you meet the parents of your kids' friends. And now it seems like an incredibly rich world. I can never see myself as being a Texas writer per se. So much of my writing life has been elsewhere. So it's not rooted in one place, but in all these different places, And you're old enough, there's so much to comb through. There's so many interesting things. Okay, listen, would you like to do this play of mine? I haven't written it yet. It's St. Ed's. It's called The Magi's Camel. It'll be a Christmas play, told from the point of view of the camel. This is what I'm going to work on. I think it would be great. I think Gregory can help me with this. Because I figured out another angle, because I talked to another friend of mine. The innkeeper. Think about the innkeeper. All the rooms are taken. There's this poor pregnant woman and her husband. There's no place for them but out with the animals. Then what happens? These 3 kings come. They were incredibly rich. They got all this stuff. What's he to make of that? And all he knows is you don't give a baby that's 1 day old all this riches. So he tries to make off with it. And then, things get complicated. He's a con man. I don't know.
And I'm rooting for him already.
It'll work, don't you think?
I so want to read this. I want to see this innkeeper steal the gift from baby Jesus. That's the moment.
That's the good. And I'm trying to decide whether, because honestly, it's like a 2-day-old idea. Whether an angel shows up to stop him. He wouldn't believe in angels, but wouldn't it make a great Christmas play?
Now he'd have to have a good biblical name. It couldn't be Frankie, right?
Frankincense. Frankincense.
Frankincense. There you go. Frankincense. Yeah, that's just that's hilarious. That's really hilarious.
We'll figure something out. But I actually talked to. This is so funny because I still have these dear friends who are at Princeton. They're retired now, and I said, Joan, I'm going to put you in it. We'll figure out one of the roles where you don't have to remember too many lines or whatever. So they're going to think about doing it in the university chapel. I said, that would be great. So you go all the way around, after 50 years of writing.
That's right.
Oh, gosh.
Jim, share with us, all the years you were at the Mentioner Center, all the notable or famous,
Right.
if you were, or
Yeah.
up-and-coming writers that you had the pleasure of inviting and
Yeah.
facing with and picking up from the airport, to your point.
Right.
Do you have a favorite? Who stands out as some of the writers who came through there?
Well, some of those have become such friendships, deep friendships. There was a writer who died about 3 years ago. I gave a eulogy in New York. Dennis Johnson, who wrote a book called, what is it, the famous one? Oh, Jesus' Son. It's an amazing book. And he was a guy he was a wild man, clearly, in his youth. I think there's not a drug he didn't take. I think it was, but I think AA saved him at some point. And he had this religious spirit. It was a weird combination of the sacred and the profane mixed in him, and he was so open because he had been so wounded. You just felt, he would cry in class all the time. And he would also say, I see, you can buy a whole, like 8 squad cars, for 30,000, but my wife won't let me have them. So, stuff like that. Or when they would get married, they went up to Alaska to mine for the gold to make her wedding ring. I mean, he was wild and sort of in so much fun, And then Jim Crace was lovely. There was a woman named Marie Howe. She might have come to St. Ed's through Carrie. I don't know. But a lot, that was a lovely part of our life, a lovely part of our life. And, we take them out to, they would take them to Barton Springs, or, out to the whatever passes for mountains in Texas, So that was a great thing.
That's wonderful.
We gave good parties.
Yes.
That was good.
How does it feel, Jim, to have your archives and papers at the Harry Ransom Center?
It feels great. But my stuff is such a mess. I think no one's going to ever get this organized. But then on the other hand, I get like a incredibly beautiful letter for a student the other day. And I thought, I can't let this be lost. There's something really valuable here. So I have a place to put it. And so my relationship with HRC has always been close, or interesting, with Tom Staley. Do any of you know Tom?
Yeah.
He's older now, but he was the director for many years. And he was a rascal. And he would always try to take credit for whatever I did. He claimed that he had gotten them first or whatever. But we collaborated in a nice way. Steve Ennis and I do really well together. They have really lovely people working there. It's a really vital place. A library like that is quite fantastic because it keeps drawing all these, world important biographers and literary people to the city. So that's nice. So there are little treasures in these universities, Absolutely.
There are few.
Yeah. And I love the St. Ed's Theater. You have gone many times, and I love the location of it. My goodness.
Yeah.
Overlooking the city. It's pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
I had a question, Jim. Did anyone in your family, your kids, anyone follow in your footsteps, or did they see all the hard work that you did and said, I'm going to run the other way?
Well, that's interesting. My son, they're both big readers, really great readers. My son, who's 40, he's a law professor, and he just wrote a book that's being published by Basic Books on the history of corporations from the Romans to Facebook. And he's a very good writer. And I still feed him books and we talk about books, and it's a lovely relationship, and he's in town. So I think he and his grandchildren are in the other room right now eating pizza. So life's good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, it's just great to see you, a group from St. Ed's. It's just terrific.
I have to say, every time I read a book, I always have this morning after I finish it. And I love to read books, but I always hate when that last page or that
I
last,
know.
I don't know. I've always been that way ever since I was a kid, because I get so engrossed in the characters and their lives and everything. And then I close it and I'm like, now I got to mourn the loss of this. So I'm always like, I got to read another book so I get over it fast. So
Well,
I don't
this-
know if other people have that experience.
I
but
think they do, but this says something good about you, that you're capable of, entering these imaginary worlds that fully. I think it's a big deal for us, and in the way of sort of expanding our sympathies, and that I think that fiction can understand. Well, I'm trying to write something that's political now, but I think fiction can help us understand things in a way that the news can't. It's by entering people's heads to get inside these people. So that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you did it great, because now I want to know, is Frankie ever going to, when he gets out, is he going to have to serve the whole time? Is he going to get parole? And then what will he do? Is he going to go straight? Probably not. So it's all these things.
Would you send me your notes on this so I could? That would be good. That would be good.
Now I want to know about frankincense. Is
Frankincense, yeah.
Does he
Yes.
ride off with a camel with a bag full of, all
Myrrh,
the
frankincense,
myrrh and all that?
What do you think? What do you think? Or does he give it all back, but one or two things for himself? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. Yeah.
We'll meet next week. We'll decide this.
Well, Jim, thank you. This has been such a treat. Yes, Victoria, you are right.
Gregory,
you to-
thank you. Thank you for setting this up. It's lovely. And these are wonderful people. It's been great. It's really great.
Thank you. The book was very entertaining. And as I was telling, as we were pulling this moment together, and once you agreed to kind of come on and visit and spend some time with us, I was letting Karen and Denise know just how down to earth and approachable and just easygoing you are. And we have seen that this evening. Thank you for just opening up and sharing. This has really been a joy.
Thank you. And I tried to be pretentious once, but it never worked. I couldn't pull it off. It's really hard.
What about pompous? Have you ever tried to be pompous?
That doesn't work well for me either. I remember once though, I was came to sit down at a reading, and I had this beard, and I think I had a turtleneck on. Somebody said, I heard somebody say, "Look at him. He thinks he's Ernest Hemingway." Oh gosh.
Hilarious.
I know. This has been lovely. Thank you all so
much.
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was a
Guys,
great pleasure to meet you and hear your stories. Thank you. Your time was definitely well worth it. So
Thank you. And I'll see you all next year when we get another book out. Okay.
Okay, great.
We hope so.
Forward to
Anything
it.
else, Karen? Anything else we need to take care of? All right.
Nope, just wishing you all a very Merry Christmas. And
Absolutely.
thanks again. And Victoria, thank you for all your support this year.
Wear your mask wherever you go. Please
Absolutely.
wear your mask.
All righty.
Thank you. Merry
Take care.
Christmas.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I love that.
Bye, guys.